Hello, this is Keith Aul and welcome back. Today's tutorial is going to be something about creating a dynamic chart, okay, using Python within Excel. And we're going to create that dynamic chart using checkboxes that we utilize within Excel. But prior to us getting to that point, we're going to build out the data frame, which you see right here. And we're also going to, you'll understand what a wide format and a long format data frame looks like and why it's necessary, and also what is pivoting and what is unpivoting. And then we'll get into creating a dynamic bar plot, as they call it, within Seaborn library using Python. So first, let's use this data set that we see here. It's a small data set. We have the months on here, and then we have individual sales amounts for these individual product lines for this fictitious company. So let's first build a data frame. Okay, we're going to go up to this cell right here. We're going to type in the Python command, which is equal py, and then we're going to tab into that. And now let's create this data frame. First of all, what you see here is actually a wide format data frame. Okay, I'm going to type in, I'm going to call this data frame wide, and that's going to equal to this range right here. Then I'm going to press Control Enter. That will commit the changes, okay? And as you can see, it created a data frame. So if we click in this Python cell, it's going to show the data frame. As you can see, it grabbed all the data that we need, okay? Now, what I want to show you, and then I'll explain this in the next tab, but let's first build out a long data frame out of this, and you'll see the difference in a second. So we'll go to this cell, and we're going to create another Python command, py equal, and here we're going to call this data frame underscore long, and then that's going to equal to our data frame that we created up here, which is the data frame wide format. We're going to use that data frame underscore wide dot mlet. Okay, and what this is actually doing is we're going to be taking a wide format and making it a long format. This is referring to pivoting and unpivoting. So what do we want to include in the long format? Well, we want to include the ID vars parameter equal to, what's the column that we want to include? We want to include the month column. So we're going to select that. Let me type that correctly. And then we're going to use the var name parameter and the value name parameter. And you'll see more clearly what these parameters actually mean and what they do. And I'm just going to call it product. This part right here, you could call it whatever that you want. And then the value names underscore name, I'm just going to call value. Again, this is something that you could call whatever that you want. Control Enter. Okay, it creates this data frame. Let's click on it, and as you can see here, this is what it created. Now let's spill these results into the cell so you could fully see it. And one shortcut key that you could use is Control Shift Alt M, as in Mary. And as you can see, it created this. Now, in the next tab here, I'm going to explain what this is. So basically, we want to return the month column, which it did, okay? And then the var name, variable name, is what it stands for. I'm just going to call it product, and it creates a column name for the variable names. And the value name is going to be called value, as you can see here. It creates a column called value. But let's step back a little bit here. Let's go back to the variable names. Once you define the column that you want to keep, it's going to use the rest of these columns that you see here, and it's going to be considered a variable name. Okay, so that's what that is. So what it's doing is taking each and one of these elements here for the month of January. It's going to create a separate row for electronic sales, as you see here. It's going to grab 12,000 here. It's also going to create a separate row for apparel sales, which you see here for January, and it's going to grab the value for that, and so on and so forth. That's why you have, first it goes through all the months, and then it grabs all the values for the electronic sales. So that's why you have five rows here associated with the electronic sales and the values for that. So that's what it does. And this will be used later on to create a bar plot or bar chart in Python using Excel. So let's go over to this tab, and now let's explain this a little bit further here. So the wide format is what you see here. It's going to have your month column, which is considered your categories, and will appear in the x-axis on your bar plot. Okay, the values here, it says here, wide format. Each variable gets its own column. So as you can see here, these are the variables, and they get their own column right here. Okay, and then the rows represent individual categories. As you can see here, these are the individual categories here. And again, that you'll see this in the bar plot later on. And then the columns itself represent separate variable names and metrics, which I stated before. Now the long format over here is, let's explain this, how this appears. Each row is one observation of one variable. What does that mean? It takes January here, okay, and creates a row for January. And in that same row, it looks at electronic sales, okay, and it takes the value for January and puts it over here. So that's what I mean by each row is one observation of one variable, and it does that for each and every category, okay, in the month column, and it repeats that for each and every variable in our columns over here. So that's what that is. Now, why long format is needed for bar charts? Well, as I explain over here, some plotting libraries in Python, okay, like Seaborn or Plotly Express or Altar, expect data in a long format, which is what you see here. Okay, and what it does, it plots multiple variables, okay, like electronic sales, apparel sales, and home goods sales on the same plot, and you're going to see a visual of this later on. And then it uses the hue or color or even the legend distinguishing between the variables. And again, you'll see a visual of this shortly. Now let's go on to the next. Let me delete this. Okay, and let's go on to here. Now what we want to do is remember what we did before by melting. Let's go back over here. So this is melting. We're using a melting method in Python. So what we did here is melting takes a wide format and converts it to a long format. That's what melting is. Pivoting, on the other hand, takes a long format and converts it to wide format. So we're going to see an example here right now, what that means here. Okay, so let's go on. Let's create this wide format here. Let's go over here using Python equal py, tab into this, and we're going to create a new data frame underscore wide 2 is equal to the data frame long one that we just created. Okay, select that. Actually, we're going to use the pivot dot pivot. Okay, and what's the index column of that? Or basically, this refers to the rows value in Excel when we want to create a pivot table. So the index is going to equal to the month column. Okay, and the next one is the columns is equal to the product column, and I'll show you why this is getting mapped out this way. And then the values, remember in Excel, when you create a pivot table, you have to drag into the values field. What are you trying to sum up or aggregate, or basically? So this is what this is referring to, this next parameter, values equal to, and then Control Enter, creates that. Let's spill the results. Previously, I showed you a shortcut key. Another way to do this is going up here next to the formula bar, clicking on this down arrow, and I want to spill the results as an Excel value. So let's go through this step by step. We're using a data frame long, which we created over here. This is the data frame long. And pay attention to this column name here, product and value. We use these column names that right here as part of the wide format right over here. So remember, columns was the product. I selected that out of the data frame long data frame, and the values, I used the values column. So what it did, it took this format here that you see here, wide format, and converted it back to a wide format. Okay, and that's what it did here. So now let's do the unpivoting, which is melting, meaning taking a wide format data frame and making it long. Again, let's do this. Okay, equal py tab data frame underscore long 2 is equal to the data frame wide that we created in the first tab dot melt, and then the ID vars, which column do we want to keep in this new formatted data frame, and it's going to be called equal to month. The variable name is going to be set to, let's see, equal the product column. And then the value name is going to be set to the value column, or this is what we're going to be calling it. Okay, Control Enter. Control Shift Alt M, and it takes this data frame over here, this wide format, and converts it to this long format. That's what melting does. And again, that's relatable to in Excel would return like Power Query. It unpivots your data to make it a long format. So now let's create a general bar plot out of this long format data frame. Equal PY SNS, which stands for Seaborn. It's a library that comes preloaded within Excel and Python. We're going to use the bar plot, and we're going to take the data frame long. Okay, data frame. We're going to pass that. What is going to be the X value, which is the horizontal on the X axis? It's going to be the months, which is our categories. So X is equal to month. And what's going to appear on the y-axis, or the vertical on the left side of the bar plot, is going to be our value column. Okay. The hue, I'll explain in a second. The hue parameter is going to equal to product. Control Enter. Okay, so I created an error, so give me a second. It might be just a typo that I did here. Keyword argument. Okay. Okay. I just did a misspelling, so let's see what I did here. X equals month. This is what I did here. I forgot Y equal value. Press enter. Okay, created an image. A shortcut key to display this image over your cells is Control Shift Alt C. Okay, so let's go scroll over here. Let's zoom out just a little bit. So what this is doing here, okay, let's look at this code here. So it's taken this long format here, data frame, okay? That's the first parameter. Second parameter, what's going to appear on the x-axis, which is our categories, which is our month, as you can see here. What's going to appear in the y-axis, which is our values here. Okay, let's go back over here. Actually, let's go over here. So the y values are all these values here. And as you can see here, we have multiple, okay, categories, let's say, but they're actually variables, because that's what we're doing. And that's what the hue parameter does. It's taken this product column here and individually plotting for each month. So January, you have one bar. February, January, you have one bar for electronic sales, one for apparel, as you can see in this legend, and one bar for home goods sales. So each month, you're going to have 3 different bars in this particular case, because we have only 3 different categories or variable names that appear on a plot. So that's how that is working here. Okay, and then in the next tab, we're going to build this dynamically. So when we click on a checkbox, Okay, I only want to display for electronic sales. I don't want to, I'm not caring about the apparel sales or home goods sales. Or I may want to display electronic sales and home goods sales in our plot. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to create that dynamic functionality in Excel with Python. And then also see here, this legend here, we're going to put this legend, you could, in this case, we're going to put this legend over to the right of the plot. You could also remove the legend. You don't necessarily need it, but this is the default, is what's happening here. So now let's go over here. Let's see how we can create this dynamic tutorial here. So first of all, we want to create some checkboxes. Okay. So in Excel 365, it has this feature over here under insert, and we can insert a checkbox. So if I go and select all these cells, I want to select checkbox, and it creates a checkbox for us. So if you don't know already, the value that appears in the formula is false. The reason why it does that is because this checkbox is unchecked. Now watch what happens when I click on this, and the value turns true. So this is crucial to when we're building the code. So whenever we click on this checkbox, the Python code will check to see if it's true or false and do what is appropriate here. So our next step here is I want to create the unique values for our product column. So our product column is here. So it's going to look at this column in this data frame, and it's going to create a list for us of the unique values. So what it'll do, it'll create 3 unique values here for here. So let's go over here. Let's use Python py. And what I'm doing here is the same thing as using transpose in Excel. Okay. So I'm just calling it unique underscore metrics. This is something a name that it doesn't mean much other than what you want to call it, equal to. We're taking the data frame long format. Let's see. And then we're going to access the product column. So that's what the square brackets are for. And then we're going to use the dot unique method. And then I'm going to show you, there's another line of code we're going to do after this, but I want to show you what gets returned. Control Enter. Okay. Now it returns what the ND array means. It's a NumPy array. So let's click on this and you'll see what it does. It creates 3 rows. That's what 3 by 1 means, by 1 column. So that's what that does. So if I do Control Shift Alt M, it spells the results and it gives me 3 rows in 1 column. But let's say I want to get these values, but I want to create 1 row with 3 columns. And you could do this using transpose method in Excel. I'm just going to go over here, equal transpose, tab into that. What's the array that we want to pass it? This. And then enter. And as you can see what it does here, it puts these values in 1 row into 3 columns. I want to do the same thing using Python. Well, one way that you could do that is I'm going to press enter, is I'm going to take the reshape method, dot reshape, and the first argument is 1 row, column, -1. -1 means Python is automatically going to create the number of columns equal to the values that we have in this array. So that's what -1 means. Let's Control Enter. And as you can see what it does, it creates this, takes the values and creates it into 3 separate columns. So I'm going to just adjust this, and let's delete this here. So now our next step is we want to create the Python code. So when we use these checkboxes that click on here, it'll dynamically update our chart. So we're going to do this here, equal py, tab into that. Our first step is create individual variable names that will hold the value of true and falses. So when we check on this, it's going to look to the value in this cell, and it's either going to be true or false. So electronics underscore sales is going to equal to our value here. And we're going to do the same thing for all these other ones. Apparel is going to equal to the value here. Press enter, and then home goods sales, and that's going to equal to the value in this cell right here. So we created that, press enter, and now we want to create an empty list. In order to do that is we call the variable name whatever we want, selected metrics, because we're going to be using this list to pass to the bar plot. And we create an empty list by creating it by 2 square brackets. That's an empty list. And now we're going to use if logic. So if, okay, electronic sales, okay. So what this means here, it's since I'm checking a variable that holds a true or false, we don't need to say, okay, is electronic sales equal to false or equal to true? Python automatically knows that we're using Boolean logic here. And since this variable only holds true and false, we don't need to set it, check to see if it equals something, equal value. So let's press enter, tab into this, selected metrics, okay, dot append. We're going to use the append method, and we're going to pass it electronic sales, electronic tab, and then we're going to pass over this. We're going to use another if statement. If apparel sales, okay, again, Boolean logic here, tab into that, selected metrics, tab into that, and we're going to pass it apparel. If home goods sales, colon, this is the correct syntax. We always have to use colon after your if statement. And then we're going to go to selected metrics dot append again, and we're going to pass it home goods sales. Home. Okay, press enter. Now what we want to do is, so again, what this append does, if any one of these are true, we're gonna add to our list up here. Let me do this here. We're gonna add these items to this empty list up here. So that's what these if statements are doing. So our next step is we need to create a filtered data frame based upon the metrics that we only want to show within our bar plot or our bar chart. Okay, so I'm going to create a variable called data frame filtered is going to equal to our data frame long format. Have into that, and we're going to filter it based upon long. Our product column, we'll go over this in more detail once we get all the code selected here. Dot is in, tab into that, and we're going to be passing it our variable called selected metrics, because this variable is now holding the list of the column names that we want to, or our variable names that we want to show in our bar plot. Okay, let's press okay, let's do a control enter before we create the bar plot. See, it creates a data frame here. And as you can see here, the reason why we only have electronic sales is because we only have this selected. Now watch what happens to this data frame. Once we click that, it's going to recalculate it, everything. So now it creates a data frame based upon both electronic sales and apparel sales. So if we uncheck this, and then let's say, for instance, let's check this. Okay, watch what happens to this data frame. Creates a data frame based upon electronic sales and home goods sales. So that's how that is working, this portion right here. So let's scroll down here. Let's continue on with the code. Okay, we did that. Now let's build the plot itself. So let's go over here, and now we'll do this step by step. So we're going to use the plotly method from the matplotlib library. Dot figure, and we're going to do the fig size is equal to, so this is, we're passing it the width and height. So I'm going to do a control enter so you see what's happening here with this code. So it creates a figure, and if I control shift alt C, let's go back to the object here. Just creates a figure for us to plot our bar plot onto it. So it creates a width by 10 by 6. That's all it's doing. So let's do something else here. Let's go scroll down. Okay, now we're going to use that figure to create SNS dot set style to a white grid. And you'll see once we create the image itself, white grid, press enter. And now let's create the bar plot itself. So SNS dot bar plot. We're going to pass it the data. We'll use the data variable. That's got to equal our data frame filter that we just created up above. Okay. What's going to go on the x-axis? Our month column that's in our data frame. And what's going to go appear on the y-axis? Our value column. Okay. And I'm going to, for right now, I'm going to eliminate the other two parameters we're going to add, but I want you to see the actual difference once we do add those other parameters. So I'm going to press that, and let's press Control Enter. Okay, now it creates an image here, as you can see here. Okay, so let's Control Shift Alt C to put that image over the cells. And this is what you get as a default. Okay. So let's make this more prettier so you understand what's going on. So let's go back up here to this code up here, and let's add those other values here. So now we're going to use our product column using hue is equal to our product column. Okay. We're going to tab into that, and let's do this step by step here. Let's do a Control Enter here. Give it a second. Okay. So by using a hue parameter, let's go back to our data frame long. This is our data frame long. So we're passing in our product column. So it's using the values in here. Since we have 3 unique values here, let's go back over here. It's creating an individual bar for each one of them. Okay. Now, since let's zoom out just a little bit here. And let's scroll up here. Let's decrease this so you can see it more. Let's also decrease the size here. So again, the hue parameter, what that does, it takes the variables within the product column, the unique variables, and creates an individual bar for those variables for each category, which is our month column here. Okay, so that's what that does. So let's uncheck this and you'll see what's happening right here. Okay, so what it did is it's only taking electronic sales, okay, out of this data frame and plotting that as an individual bar for each category, okay, which is our months column. So that's what that is doing. So we know that this functionality is working. So, and this is the default color set that it's also using. So let's go back up here and let's see what happens, okay, when we use the palette variable and set it to something that comes with this library, and we're going to do set to. Now let's press Control Enter. See what it does? It just takes changes the color set. And again, with this particular parameter here, you could pass it whatever that you want. You could pass it the hex codes of the colors that you want, and you could define for each bar what the color can be. All you have to do is just pass it a color set in a dictionary format. Okay, so let's decrease the size of this here. Okay, now let's make this a little bit more prettier. Let's press enter, and now we want to add a title to this bar chart. So plt dot title, and we're just going to call it monthly. We got to pass it in quotes, monthly retail sales. Okay, that's one. We want to be able to create our own values on the x-axis and y-axis. So we could do that by using plt.xlabel, and we're just going to call it month. And for the y label, we're going to call it sales. So in other words, as you see over here, it's using the actual column name, but we want to call this sales over here. So that's what that's going to change. And now remember this legend here, we're going to take this legend off the plot and set it over to the right side here. So we do that by using the legend, tab into that. We're going to pass it a title here. As you can see right now, the title is just product. Let's go over here, and we're going to use title parameter is equal to product category column, comma, and then we're going to use the parameter bbox is what it's called, to underscore anchor is equal to one column one, and then the location of it is going to be the upper left. And you'll see that why that means something here, equal to, let's do this. Let's just do this here. So that location parameter, that if we added it, we can specify if it's going to be up here or down here or whatnot. And the same thing with the 1 comma 1 here parameter. What 1 comma 1 means, it's going to place the upper left corner of this legend here, okay, at the point of 1 comma 1, which is just outside the top right of your plot area. So that's what that means. So let's just check here. Let's use the location parameter so you could see what this is actually doing. Let's say upper right. Let's control enter. Okay, it does it to the right of upper right, but it keeps it on the plot itself. So let's but which we don't want, which was the default before. So let's do bottom right, and you'll see what happens here. So you have many different options. Control enter. That might not have been a valid parameter. Let's see what it says here. let's scroll down here to the right. Oh, here, center. So it gives you either lower right, lower left, center, upper, and stuff like this. So let's use lower. I thought it was bottom, so let's use lower as the value. Okay, so this is what the lower right does here. Okay, so you have many different options of plotting where the legend will appear. So that's, let's scroll back up here. Let's select this, and as you see, we'll have a third bar for each variable now for each month here. So as you can see, that's what that does. So again, excuse me, this was, excuse me. Sorry about that. I just had a cough. So anyways, I'm back. But anyways, you could see what you could do with a bar plot and how you can dynamically change it with by using checkboxes. Again, hope this tutorial was a bit longer. It helped explain the wide and long format of your data frames or data sets and explain pivoting and unpivoting and how it's important to use a long format data frame for certain charts within Python. I want to thank you for stopping by today. Remember to subscribe to my channel and also please like and share, because as you do so, other people will get notified of this and it'll appear in their search results. And I know other people are looking to learn this information. Thanks again for stopping by. You have a great day, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye now.